Hello, this is Professor Dhanpal from NITR Chennai. How is my voice?
Yes, sir. Voice is okay, sir. Hello, sir. Voice is
Yes.
okay.
Yes, sir. Hello.
Yes, sir. Voice
Hello.
is okay.
Voice is okay.
Yes, sir.
Oh, very good, sir. My video is okay.
Yes, sir. You yes, sir.
So video and audio are okay, right, sir?
Yes, sir.
Then shall I continue?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good afternoon, friends. Sorry for the delay or sorry for the bit of confusion. I don't know whether my system is all right. But anyway, now it's sorted out. And then I welcome the participants of the program conducted by the Oriental College of Technology on the outcome-based education. So this afternoon, I'll be very glad to share with you my experience at NITTTR Chennai on the topic of strategic planning for technical institutions. So as you know, NITTTR Chennai is connected with the technical education system for the past 50 years, and then we have been doing a lot of work. And then we have evolved a model of strategic planning for the technical institutions, which has been implemented in very many institutions. And so I'll probably in this afternoon, I will discuss the details of this particular model, and so that by learning this, you will be able to take this model home and then develop a strategic planning for your institution. Okay, so perhaps before I go over to the PowerPoint, then perhaps I'll give you a brief introduction to the strategic planning and particularly specifically the model that NITTTR Chennai has evolved. So I mean, in the current scenario, it is always a challenge for any technical institution to maintain excellence. And so this program is about outcome-based education, which aims at achieving excellence in any technical institution. So it has been a challenge for technical institutions to maintain challenge, particularly because of the ever-changing expectations of the industry on students' competencies, unpredictable employment potential, varying demand for engineering programs, limited potential for interaction with industry, and so on and so forth. So there are so many challenges that the technical institutions are facing at present. But on the other hand, the technical institutions have to meet accreditation standards and adapt to pedagogical practices such as outcome-based education. So on the one hand, the environment is placing a number of challenges on, and then the other hand, the authorities, the technical education authorities are expecting the institutions to maintain excellence. So therefore, progressive technical institutions are always constantly engaged in various developmental activities, which includes the various curricular innovations, faculty development, laboratory and infrastructure development, integrating ICT into the learning process, upgrading research facilities, launching new programs, catering to industry needs, etc., to cite a few. So many of these activities are carried out by many of your institutions so that your institution is staying current and is trying to achieve excellence. Perhaps you as a concerned teacher would be wondering how to integrate these activities of your institution, specifically how to identify areas that requires change in your institution, then who will be involved in the developmental process, then how to prioritize such areas, and so on and so forth. So all these questions are integrated into the strategic planning model that we propose this afternoon, which is about, which helps, which is a tool for any institution to achieve excellence, excellence. So that is a brief introduction. With that, let me try to share the my PowerPoint presentation. Yeah, that's right. And then, so this is the idea. Yeah, so that is my name. That I'm Professor Dhanpal, former professor, Technical Teacher Training Institute, Chennai. And so this afternoon, we are learning a technique for strategic development for technical institutions. So this lesson will cover the introduction to strategic planning and as well as the steps, the steps in strategic planning that our model is proposing. These are the two major topics that I'll be covering in the coming 1.5 hours. So now it's about 2:10, and so I have time up to 3:30. So I will give an introduction to the strategic planning process in general for technical institutions, and particularly the steps involved in strategic planning as per the model that is being proposed. Okay, then. Right. So that is the first thing is the introduction to strategic planning, and that's all. So I'll discuss what is meant by strategic plan in this particular model, then why we do strategic planning, when a strategic planning should be done for an institute, then who should do the strategic planning. So these are the broad topics that I'll be covering as part of the introduction to the strategic planning. So once we have this background, then we will be able to appreciate the steps involved in the strategic planning. So the first is, so what is strategic planning? So strategic planning is a future-oriented process. It's a future-oriented process where an organization decides, identifies, determines what it wishes to become, in the near future. And that is what a technical institution determines what it wishes to become in the near future and how it proposes to get there. So the desired state of excellence and also the means for achieving such a state of excellence. That is what is about the strategic planning. That is the desired state of excellence, then the means for achieving such a desired state. And that is what our strategic planning is about. And this is for in the context of a technical institution, technical college or a university or a polytechnic or any other technical institution. That's all. Right. So perhaps, so you're working in an engineering college or an university. So where are we now? So where is my institution now? What is its state now in terms of percentage that is graduating, percentage of students that are employed, the revenue generated, the number of industry partnerships that are available, the awards received by the college as well as the faculty and so on. So these are some of the parameters which specify our current state, the current state of the institute. Some of the parameters, that the parameters could be much more, but then I'm just giving you a sample parameters. Okay, so this is where we are now. 80% of our students are graduating, 70% of them are getting employed. Then I'm generating 1 million rupees every year as revenue and so on, some kind of a figure now. But then, so you're a conscientious teacher, and then so you want to develop your institute to a state of excellence in the near future. Excuse me. So where do I want my institution to be in the future? So in the future, this explains my future state again in terms of the same parameters. what is the desired future state, and that you have a sort of a vision, you have a sort of an idea. You means you as a faculty or all the faculty together, your heads of department, your principal, your director, your administration as a whole. So your institute has got some kind of a plan, some kind of a vision, some kind of a dream for the future. That is, what kind of excellence, what kind of a state your institute is planning to achieve in the future. And so that is the desired state which you want to be in 3 years or 5 years of time. Sorry. So how do we get there? And so that is what the idea about. How do we get there? So what are the means that are available for an institution to reach the desired state of excellence? And that is where the strategies come into picture. The strategies. So the strategies, so by identifying and then by implementing a set of strategies, that is strategic choices in terms of thrust areas, in terms of areas which require change or development in your institute. By appropriately identifying strategies and implementing them, you will be able to reach the desired future state. And that is what this whole discussion is about: how to identify the strategies, not only depending on your internal status, but also more importantly, taking into consideration the external view, that is the society, the opportunities that are available in the external environment. The external environment is the most important contributor in identifying such strategies. That is because the external environment is constantly changing, and therefore our strategies also need to constantly change so that we are able to achieve the state of excellence. And so what is strategy? Strategy is a way of using the organization's internal resources, because already many of your institutions have got a good internal resources. And so so you need to use these internal resources, which could be the best resource is the human resource, then followed by the infrastructure, then your academic reputation, and so on. So they are the resources. Use your internal resources to respond to the external environment, to the challenges of the external environment in order to be successful. So strategy is a way of using your strengths, so your own internal resources, for meeting the challenges of the environment. That is what we mean by strategy in this context. And so this is what is the strategic planning is about. That is identifying the ways and means, taking into consideration your own internal strengths and also the challenges offered by the external environment in order to meet excellence as visioned by your institute. So that is what the strategic planning is about. This is the model that we are now discussing. Then why do it? And that is another important question. After all, when you implement a strategic plan, typically for a period of 2 years or 3 years, then a lot of effort is involved, a lot of resources are involved. So why we do it? And that is the most important question. So the organization's internal environment is in your control. That is infrastructure, the faculty, then every other resource. And so you can make all your decisions. But then the external environment is not in our control. For instance, now we have the pandemic, and so now the whole educational process is changed. So the environment is not in our control. It's constantly evolving, and therefore we need to constantly respond to the challenges of the external environment, so that our institution maintains a good standard, we are able to carry out our operations effectively and so on. Right. So that is the whole idea. So, so the external environment. So what are the major factors of the external environment? That is, in the past, it is the liberalization and privatization, globalization of the economy that was a major factor, and therefore a lot of opportunities are available. The industrial scenario is totally changed, and therefore the kind of graduates we need to develop is entirely different. It's no more the public sector units, but now the private sector, that is where the jobs are. Then that is the first challenge. The second challenge is the ICT, the ICT technologies, that is the ICT technologies that are the challenges offered or the opportunities offered by the ICT technology, particularly for the instruction, the instruction and then the means of instruction, the way we carry out instructions. Then perhaps again, not only the information and communication technologies, but then the technology is changing very fast, and therefore fast changing technology offers a lot of scope or a lot of need for our own curricular changes, the way we train our students and so on and so forth. Then again, there is a general concern for quality and relevance of educational programs by the society, by the NBA, and so on and so forth. Then again, the rapidly changing technological scenario demands our curricular changes, the way we train our students, the way we develop our infrastructure, and so on and so forth. Perhaps you will be wondering, there is a news in the past 2 days that most of the software companies are going to reduce their headcount by about 3 lakhs, and that is because of the automation, robotic process automation they call, and so that is a big challenge. So that is one of the challenges that now the industry is facing, and so the technical institutions also cannot be unaware of, and they have to take into account all this. Right. So you need to proactively anticipate change, and measure their impact and respond effectively with your own systems and so on. So that is again why. Then why also, perhaps, so that we can use what is called a bottom-up model in the strategic planning process. A bottom-up model means we are going to involve every one of our employee, every one of our faculty members. It's not the administration alone, it's not the management alone, but every one of our faculty will be involved in this process. Again, that is another reason why we go for strategic planning. Then to enable an organization to optimally utilize our resources, to continually adapt to the reality, and that is uh, at more than at any point in time. Now at this point the reality is changing very fast, not only the pandemic, the changes in technology, the expectations of the society, uh, and several other reasons, and therefore any technical institution has to continuously adapt to the reality, and that is one of the reasons that we need to go for a strategic plan. Then the bottom-up model means it's concerned about our stakeholder. So stakeholder or stakeholders. So who are the stakeholders of a technical institution? So any person or a group or organization, so that has got a stake in the college or the institutes, in the institutes working, or resources or output. So that is what is a stakeholder. So who are the stakeholders of your college? Perhaps these are the stakeholders of your college, namely the vice chancellor, the director of technical education, yes, then the principal or director, then the professors, teachers and supporting staff, more importantly, the students, and of course their parents, then again, more importantly, the employers and the community at large. and they are the stakeholders of any technical institution. It could be university or college. And these are the stakeholders, and they have an interest in the well-being of your college, and they are affected by the performance of your college, particularly your clients, namely your students, and the employers who employ your students. Okay. So what are their wants and needs? And that's it. That is the focus. And that is how I plan to meet their needs. And that is what is about. So you can have two models of planning depending on the stakeholder, namely the top-down model, then the other is the bottom-up model. So the top-down model is depending on the administration. So the your I mean, perhaps your trust, or your vice chancellor or your director and a small group decides the planning. They decide the direction in which your institute has to go, and then tell every other faculty to work towards that direction. So that is the top-down model. But then, so this particular model is about the bottom-up, where it's slightly different. So the bottom-up model is something like this. So this is what is the so this is where the power, or so this is where the vice chancellor or director of technical education has the highest power, followed by the principal, followed by the professor, and so on. Students have the least power, and employers have even less power in a typical environment. And this the arrow indicates the level of power, level of authority that normally exists in an institution. The bottom-up model gives more power for the students. That is, the stakeholders with lesser power have a greater role in the development process of the institute. Therefore, the students, and more importantly, the teachers, have a greater role in the planning and implementation process, and that is what the bottom-up model. So they own the developmental process. They determine, they discuss, they arrive. That is namely the students, the teachers, the supporting staff. So they discuss and arrive at a plan. They implement. So they have a greater role compared to the DTE or vice chancellor. And this is what is the bottom-up model is about. And this is what we are sort of proposing in this particular model. So the important increases as the power decreases. As the power decreases, the vice chancellor has the highest power, but here in this bottom-up model, the importance of the vice chancellor decreases. The importance of the principal is to a lesser degree, but the importance of the faculty member is much more, and that is what is about. And that is essential to the daily functioning of the organism. Power is the ability to cause a change. Power is the ability to take part in the developmental process, and that is what is about. Okay. Right. So, so, uh, so that's what I mean. We are just briefly saw what is meant by strategic planning and why we do strategic planning, so that we can continually adapt to the ever-changing environment, and then so we'll be able to use the bottom model. That is why. When so when do you do the strategic planning? Now. So now is the best time. Now is the time. So there is no need for a delay. So any time is the best time. Any time of the institution is the best time in starting a strategic planning. Okay. So that is the idea. So there is no specific time of the year, or there is no specific time in the developmental phase of any given institution, any given institute. So any time is the right time. So even a very new, brand new engineering college can have a strategic plan, or maybe half a century old engineering college can also have a strategic plan. So the age of the institution, the level of its development doesn't determine the strategic plan. But then now, at any time is the right time to start a strategic planning. But then, so there is a, but then when you should not go for a strategic plan, that is when there is no support from the administration, when the administration doesn't desire that, then you can't go for this kind of a model or strategic plan. That is because there is good amount of investment in terms of time and resources, and therefore the the management should have a willingness, and the first step comes from the decision is the is a management. So a management makes a decision. Okay, let us go for a strategic plan, and unless that happens, you can't go for a strategic plan. Okay, so that is what is when. So anytime you can start, provided you have the support of the administration or management or the trust which is running your college. So who should do it? That is the other big question. So the bottom-up model says that everyone in the institute, particularly the larger number of stakeholders, namely the faculty and students, should be involved, and that is what it is about. So everyone in the institute should be involved in the strategic planning and implementation. That is the focus. Everyone. So why is everyone involved in this particular model? And that is what we are going to look into. That is there is a very big need in aligning the people in the organization. That is a very big need. You need to align people in the organization, uh, and so this is what it is. So the picture gives an organization which um, doesn't have a strategic plan. So the arrows indicates the environment. So the environment is moving in a particular direction that is not in our control. The external factors are moving in a particular direction which is not in our control. The arrows inside the cloud, that is our own activities, our own actions, our own focus, and so they are pointing in different directions. They are pointing in different directions which doesn't coincide with the environment. So our efforts are in every other direction. So this is what happens when an institution doesn't have a strategic plan. Then the other scenario is an institution has got a strategic plan which is aligned with the environment. So the strategic plan is identified where the environment is going, and it has developed a strategic plan. But the internal arrows are the efforts of the people, particularly faculty, students, and they are not aligned with the strategic plan. Their efforts are in every other direction. Therefore, again, this particular scenario is not very effective. Then which one is effective? So this is the most effective scenario where the this bigger arrow, which represents the strategic plan, is aligned with the environment, and most of the internal activities and focus is also aligned with the strategic plan. So this is likely to be more effective than an institution without a strategic plan, or an institution with a plan, but then people are not owning that particular plan. And that is why the ownership of the stakeholders is very important, particularly the faculty and the staff, faculty, staff, and students. And that is why everyone should be involved in the strategic planning and implementation process. And so this is what is about. So again, so I summarize what we have seen so far. So what is a strategic plan? So strategic plan is a future-oriented process where an institute determines where it wants to go, so what is its future status, and then it also identify the strategies, that is the means by reaching that state of excellence. Why? So that proactively anticipate a change, and then identify strategies to achieve excellence. When is the time for strategic planning. Now is the time for achieving a strategic plan. There is no specific time provided. You have the blessing of your administration. Who should be involved? Everyone in the organization should be involved in the strategic planning. So this is what we have seen. So this gives a good background about the model that we are now proposing. So with that, in the coming 1 hour, let me introduce you broadly to the broad steps that are involved in the strategic planning in the model that we have proposed, that we are proposing. Okay. So the steps in strategic planning, and then every detail that goes with that. Right. So this is what it is about. So here this arrow is so perhaps it's a cyclical process. The model that is proposed is a cyclical process, and so therefore it goes on again and again. In the sense, so a typical strategic plan is implemented for a period of 2 years. At the end of 2 years, you review the development, then again plan, implement another strategic plan. And so that is why this is a cyclical process. That is one aspect. Then so that is why it's a cyclical process. So perhaps a good beginning is the initiate the strategic planning process. The moment your institution decides, okay, let us go for a strategic plan, then you make arrangement, then you call your faculty, then train them, develop a strategic plan, and then you try to implement. So that is the first step in strategic planning. Then the second step is the mandate, which we will see in detail in the coming discussion. So the mandate, so every college or a university or an institution has got a mandate. That is the purpose for which it has been established, for offering UG and PG programs, for offering training to the society, for carrying out research and developmental activities, and so on. So that is a mandate. That is the activities an institution has to do. I mean, it cannot escape doing it, and it cannot stop from doing such activity. That is called mandate. So what is allowed and what is required by authorities for an institution to do, and that is what is mandate. And so, because the strategic planning has got a relevance, or the other way, the mandate has got a relevance for the strategic plan, and therefore, so we need to have a look at the mandate of our institute, so that the plan that we develop is in compliance with the mandate. So that is the whole idea. Because the society or my institute is expected to carry out these activities, and so therefore I plan accordingly. Then the next important step is the vision and mission statement. So every institution has got a vision. So what is the vision, or what is the vision statement? Vision is about a dream. It's a picture. It's a rosy picture about my own organization. That is how my organization will look like in another 5 years, in another 6 years, in the near future, maybe 3 years or 5 years time. What sort of a level my institute would have achieved, and that is what I dream about, and that is what is the vision about, which we will see in detail. So every planner, or every vice chancellor, or every principal director has got a vision for his or her own institute, and therefore the planning has to be based on or take into account this vision, and therefore we need to revisit the vision of our institute, our own department, so that we plan, we make a strategic plan. So the vision, what is a mission? Mission is the means of achieving a vision. So I have a grand plan in terms of vision. So how do I achieve? How do I achieve my vision in the coming 2 or 3 years? And that is what is mission is about. Mission is mainly the means of achieving, and therefore the planning has to take care of, and which we will see in detail in this particular model. Okay, so the vision and the mission and the mandate, they are all internal to the organization. Okay, so I can have any vision, so I can have a mandate, I can have a mission accordingly, but then more importantly, the external environment, and that is what controls our planning. And therefore, the next step is the SWOT analysis, conducting SWOT analysis. So that is the strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. That is mainly a study of the internal and external environments, and therefore identify strategies to meet the need, requirement, expectations of the external environment with whatever resources that are available internally, so that I can reach excellence. That is what is a SWOT analysis is about. The outcome of the SWOT analysis determine what is called the strategies, or what is called thrust areas, or a set of areas that require change uh, in our institutions. And when such change is implemented, then perhaps the institution is going to reach an excellence. Uh, and so the thrust area, then the objectives. So once we define thrust areas, then we specify objectives. That is the major steps that are involved in carrying out or in implementing a particular thrust area, and that is called the objective. Uh, then, so how is an objective, and together the objectives implement a thrust area. So we have got a couple of tools called the work plan and action plan. Basically, they are planning tools similar to Gantt chart, and so we will learn their structure, how they help in the implementation of our plan. So, so we develop the work plan and action plan and implement the strategic plan for about 2 years. At the end of 2 years, again, we sort of iterate, reiterate this particular process. And so a strategic management is made into a culture of the organization. And this is the model that is being proposed in this in this lecture. And this is what I'm going to talk about in the coming 45 minutes or so that we can have a discussion after 45 minutes. So the first thing is, so these are the steps. So initiating a strategic planning process, then so whatever we have seen, clarify the mandate, develop vision and mission, SWOT analysis, thrust areas, objectives, work plan. And so they constitute the strategic plan. So you'll be making a document of about 200, 300 pages, which is ready for implementation. So this whole process is a strategic planning process, and typically this takes about 4 months or 5 months. In 3 or 4, 5 months, you have a plan ready, which you will be implementing in about 2 years. So this is the whole picture, namely about 7 steps. 7 steps are there in the planning process, namely, so whatever is indicated in this picture. So we will discuss one by one the different steps. So the first step is the initiating the strategic planning process. So my institution or my management has made a decision. So instead of the conventional planning, we will go for strategic planning, which involves identifying the opportunities, the requirements of the external environment, and therefore we go for such a plan. So once you made a decision, then that is where the strategic planning process starts. So the college develops or constitutes a strategic planning group. It's called SPG, so strategic planning group. So the college constitutes a strategic planning group. Then typically it involves the principal, the heads of department, and several other faculty. They they constitute the members. So you need to train them because you train them in this whole philosophy and this process. And so that requires a couple of months or a month or so. And so these are the first steps, namely making a decision about the strategic plan, constituting a strategic planning group, and training the members, which are mainly your faculty and your supporting staff. And that is what this is about. Uh, so the strategic planning group, the principal or director, then most of the heads of department, then one person having a great writing skill because there are a lot of reports to be written, one person having a great facilitation skills, somebody who is a good person who manages people and so on. Then of course you should involve representation for women. Then nomination of a process champion. The process champion is a sort of an in charge for the whole strategic planning process. So you nominate a process champion who could be the principal or who could be a senior head of department or professor, such people. Okay, so that is what this is about. The process champion is a person selected as the chief coordinator of the strategic planning process. He will be the secretary and so on. So that is the arrangement. So that's what is. So that is what is about. So once you make a decision about setting up the strategic planning process, you initiate, you constitute a strategic planning committee group, strategic planning group, SPG it is called, with a process champion and the members. Okay. So you have done it, and this takes about a week, but then. So the strategic planning group has to have a look at the mandate of your institution, so that none of the requirements of the mandate are violated when we make a plan. So every one of the requirements in the mandate is taken care of adequately, and that is the purpose of looking into the mandate of the institution. What is meant by the mandate? Mandate is a description of what an organization must be doing and is permitted to do as a sort of an organization must do and is permitted to do by the legitimate higher authority. Legitimate higher authority is the vice chancellor or the director of technical education and so on, or your own the trust of your college. So what the organization must do and is permitted to do, must do and permitted to do, and that is what it is about. So that is called the mandate. So an example is, so we have a college called Mahalingam College of Engineering and Technology in Tamil Nadu. It's a private, and this is an example of a mandate. It's a private college. It's a co-education institution. It offers UG and PG programs in engineering to the candidates selected by the government of Tamil Nadu, and uses the curriculum prescribed by Anna University. It has to provide education, that is UG and PG programs, training, research, consultancy, and other services. It has to follow all regulations of the state and central governments and so on. So this is the mandate, and while planning, none of them should be left out. That is what is important. I mean, you cannot shirk your responsibility or offering UG and PG programs. None of the government's regulations have to be violated, and so on and so on. So that is the whole idea. Universities, governments, NBAs, AICTs, all regulations are taken care in the planning process. This is where you visit the mandate. So the mandate says what your institute should do and is permitted to do, and typically like this. And so this is a sort of a you should leave out or you should violate any of these provisions. So that is the reason we keep the mandate always at the back of our mind when we do the strategic planning process. And that is all about mandate, nothing more than that. You keep the requirements of mandate at the back of your mind so that none of them are left out. That is all about mandate. Then the second is the vision and mission and their relevance for the planning. And so every institute has got a vision, which is a very rosy, a grand a picture of the institution, how my college will look like in the coming years, and how I'm going to achieve, that is mission. And so it has got a direct bearing on the planning, and therefore you need to look into the vision and mission of your college. So vision indicates the desired future state of the college from a long-term perspective, 5 years, 10 years, and so on. So that is what the perspective about the vision is about. A picture how my institution is going to perform, what kind of awards, what kind of rewards, what kind of achievements, what kind of excellence it is going to achieve in the near future, and that is what it is about. That is the vision, and so this is what it is about. Uh, so the mandate, and so the vision. So the mandate is so sort of a mandate is a sort of a closed one, and vision is a sort of a something which can expand, which can change. But then now you have an entity that is a mandate and vision. So vision of a college is how the college will look like when it is highly successful, a state of success, a state of excellence, which is a future oriented. And so this state of success sets the direction for an organization from a long-term perspective. Then again, so again, this state of success provides members of the organization with a view of the future, a clear sense of direction that where we are going. So vision, the importance of vision is it gives a clear sense of direction in which we are going. That is emphasis on research, emphasis on industry institute interaction, emphasis on outcome-based education, emphasis on accreditation, emphasis on entrepreneurship, emphasis on using ICT technology to the fullest extent in the instructional process, and so on and so forth. That is what my vision is about. And so my every step in my planning has to take care of this. And that is the whole idea about the vision and its relevance for the planning. And that is where, so that is a link. And that is the basis for the vision and the strategic plan. So it doesn't leave out the vision. It operates within the framework of mandate, taking into account so every uh, every sort of a every visualization or so every aspiration as described or as envisaged in the vision. Okay, every aspiration envisaged in the vision, and that is what the strategic planning has to take care of, right? So that is what mission is. Then that is what vision is. Then what is mission? Mission is the means by which you achieve the vision. The means by which the vision is pursued. So as a single vision leads to a number of mission statements. Then the vision is has got a long-term perspective, whereas mission is achieved within a specified frame, maybe 2 years or 3 years. That is what the life of mission. So within 2 years or 3 years, we are going to uh, achieve the vision by implementing or by carrying out that vision. So that is the relationship between vision and mission. So you have a grand picture called vision, and then so that is a picture of excellence. And what is that you're going to achieve? What is that you're going to need to achieve as part of your institutional development? And mission gives the activities or the means which you will do to achieve to reach the state that is described by the vision, right? So this table illustrates the link between vision and mission. Vision is a long term, not only long term, it is continuous. All the time you are pursuing your vision of excellence, vision on focus of research, vision on focus on industry institute interaction, and so on and so on. Whereas mission is short term, right? So I need to get accreditation for two of my UG programs, and that is going to be my mission for the coming 2 years. Within 2 years, I have achieved getting accreditation. So my mission is achieved. So that mission is achieved. So I need to have an ERP, enterprise resource software for ERP, enterprise resource planning software for my institution. So I developed that in campus or get it from a vendor, and in 2 years, the ERP software is installed and up and running in my institution. That is again a mission, and so on. So that is what my mission is about. Mission is about 2 years. Vision is sort of a continuous process. Then vision indicates the desired future state in general terms. Mission specifies the mean by which vision will be pursued. Vision is pursued continuously. Then mission is accomplished within 2 years or so. Right. So from the strategic planning point of view, the mission statement has got direct bearing on what is called thrust areas. That is our own strategic planning and implementation is directly based on the mission with towards implementing the vision, keeping in mind the mandate, so that we don't leave out or violate any of the provisions of the mandate. So that is what the relevance of vision and mission on the planning is about. Okay, so this is what the whole picture, namely we have a closed mandate which we cannot change. So within that mandate, we have a vision. The dotted line indicates the vision. It's in our control, so it can expand. So you can include newer areas in your vision. In order to achieve, accomplish the vision, I have a set of missions which I carry out in a short period of 1 or 2 years so that this vision is achieved. And this model is what is we implemented in this particular strategic planning. Okay, this particular model implements this. Okay, and so this is what. So we example. So how a vision and mission typically look like. So this is the Oriental College of Technology. So their vision is to become a pioneer in the field of engineering and research by providing quality, skilled, and compatible engineers who are proficient in domain of knowledge. So here the focus is on research. So the focus of OCT, Oriental College of Technology, is on research, and the then skill and the knowledge of the students, the skill, the ability in developing the ability, knowledge of the students in the domain area, in the engineering area. So developing the domain knowledge in students and research, that is the vision of OCT, OCT, Bhopal. Yeah, that's right, Bhopal. And how are they proposed to achieve? So they have identified the following mission. So cutting edge technologies, then on the, so they are, so OCT is trying to develop job ready graduates. That is their focus. Job ready graduates. So they develop the skills in their students so that when they pass out, they are job ready. Then the graduates are able to solve industrial problems. So they have the domain knowledge, problem solving ability, so they are able to solve industrial problems. So that is again another focus. There is another mission of the OCT. So they are the hard skills, namely Oriental College is focusing on job-ready graduates who will have the domain knowledge to solve industrial problems. Not only that, the graduates will be high in good in ethics, they will be good in leadership skills, entrepreneurship skills. That is where the focus is. So your training, your academics should inculcate ethics, leadership, and entrepreneurship skills. And that is what this is about. Uh, so that is what the mission is about, right? So in short, the focus, the vision of Oriental College is on research and domain knowledge of the students. They try to achieve the vision by job ready graduates with ability to solve industrial problems with uh, with a good ethical background, leadership ability, and entrepreneurship skills. And accordingly, so the instructional method is outcome-based education is focused towards this, and the strategic planning should also aid the students who are the uh, who are the most important stakeholders. They should be able to get these kind of benefits as part of strategic planning. That is what we try to achieve, and that is what we try to achieve. Uh, try to achieve, right? Okay, that is what it is, and then right. So this is what. So the moment I decide about going for a strategic plan, then what I do is I revisit my mandate so that I have an idea what my institute needs to do and allowed to do. Then I also revisit my institute's vision and mission, and then so what is the big picture? What is the direction in which the institute has to go, and how it proposes to achieve. So what are the immediate plans? And so the strategic planning group makes a study of this, and so that helps in identifying the strategic directions that the strategic directions as part of the strategic plan. Right. So that is what is about. So whatever we have discussed, namely the vision, the mission, they're all internal to the institute. Internal to the institute. Your own infrastructure is internal. Your own faculty strength is internal. But then more importantly, you have the environment, the external environment. And that is what determines the direction of your institute. And therefore, we should have a study of the external environment and of course the internal environment. And that is what the next step is about. That is called SWOT analysis. So there are very many tools available for studying the external environment as well as the internal environment. This model makes use of the SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis. That is the tool this model of strategic planning makes use of. There are several other tools available in making the situational analysis. They call it a situational analysis. There are several other tools for the situation analysis, but SWOT is a time-tested tool, and so this model makes use of the SWOT analysis. So you have the external environment, and that is what always looming large on the internal environment. So the external environment and all its influence is always looming large, just like the pandemic, the fast changing technology, the demands of the industry, they always looms large. They have greater influence on the internal environment or the working of your institute. So you cannot ignore them. And so every planning that you need to do has to take into account the direction, the requirement, the push, the pull of the external environment. Otherwise, your strategic planning may not be effective, and that is the whole idea. And that is where the SWOT, SWOT helps you in the study of the situational analysis that is the study of external environment and the internal environment. The internal environment has a strength and weakness. For example, strength could be your faculty, strength could be your infrastructure, weakness could be your location. Maybe you are not located in an industrial zone, you are located in a rural area, and so on. That could be a weakness. But otherwise, so you have many strengths and then you have a couple of weaknesses in your organization, and that is the internal. External is the environment. It's offering a number of opportunities. Then couple of things are threats, and so we have to take care of. There is opportunities and threats. So that is what the SWOT analysis is about. Internally, we are going to look into our strength and weakness. Externally, we are going to look into the opportunities and threats that are provided by the environment, and that is what is important. And that's what we will develop a tool when NITTR Chennai trains an institution in developing a strategic plan. Then we develop tools for collecting the SWOT data and the analysis of SWOT data, how to make use of the SWOT data in identifying the strategic directions and so on. That's what we do. So we have tools. For example, questionnaires, interviews, and such tools are there, which will help you in making the situational analysis. Right. Okay. So the internal environment. So the internal environment is determined by the people, then the infrastructure, namely the properties, then your own processes, namely the teaching learning process, the administration process, the quality control process, and so on. So that the accounting process, the faculty evaluation process, the feedback process. So every such process, the examination and the student evaluation process. So they're all process. So the products are your students, your publications, your patents. So they're all products. So the four P's, namely the people in the organization, they are the first and foremost resource, namely the human resource. Then the second resource is the property, that is the infrastructure. Then the processes, the administrative, academic, evaluation processes, and the products, which are your students and the outcome. So the four P's determine the strength and weakness, or the internal scan, or the internal study of the SWOT analysis. And that is what this is about. So you need to develop questionnaires or interview schedules to collect data on the strength and weaknesses of your own institute, collect data from the HR department, faculty, and your students, alumni, employers. So they will all be in a position to give you data on these four P's, namely people, properties, process, and products. Okay. So that is what we are going to do as part of the SWOT analysis. Then, yeah, so the people covers the teaching staff, administrative, faculty is the foremost. In addition, every other, yeah, so that is what is about. Then the properties are infrastructure, library, the laboratories, equipment, machinery, tools, and then so on, so on. So the complete physical infrastructure, including the buildings, your laboratories, your workshops, and so on. The internet, computer center, and whatnot. So this is very obvious. People, properties, then the processes. Yeah, that's right. The first process is the academic process. How is the teaching learning process carried out in your institute? Whether you use the conventional process or use ICT or so that kind of a thing. And then of course the governance, the support from the management, administration, the curriculum development, then the student support services, the guidance and counseling offered to the students, then use of ICT, staff development. Yeah. So how was what are the avenues for the faculty for development, and so on and so on. So these are the processes. The products are students, percentage, awards, placement, and so on. Publication by faculty, then maybe publications, patents, and so on. So that is what is important. So they are the products that, so these are the internal scan. So through questionnaires or interviews, then you will be collecting data on these four P's, so that you will be able to analyze the data, identify the strength among your infrastructure and processes, the weakness among your processes or infrastructure, so that you will be able to take care of them in the planning process. Okay. So that is about the internal environment, but more importantly, you have the external environment always threatening, controlling the direction in which any institute is moving, namely the steep, namely the uh, social factors, namely, for instance, the preference for technical education. About 10 years ago, the preference for technical education was at peak. So the whole society wants to take up technical education. Now it is reduced, and so on. So the technological changes. So again, so not only ICT, but then what kind of changes are, the technology is changing rapidly. So you need to change your laboratories, your instructional processes, and train your students so that they have focus. So you are able to make job ready graduates who will be able to solve industrial problems and so on. Then, of course, the economic and environmental aspects, for example. So there's something like the globalization, the environment, the ecology, and such requirements. Then the political, that is what the government, AICT, NBA, university, so their expectations. For example, now they want NBA, they want accreditation, OBE, and things like that. So in institutional ranking framework, so a number of them, and so the authorities will be keep on making demands on any institution, and so the society also looks into such parameters, namely NBA accreditation or institutional ranking, global ranking, and so on. So these are the opportunities and threats. This is where the external environment makes an impact on. So the social factors are the demography, then training for the disadvantaged group, and so on and so on. So technological factors are the impact of ICT, then the robotic process automation, that is what is now bothering the workforce. So they say 3 lakh software engineers will lose their job in the coming months. And that is what the software majors in India are planning now. And so we have a problem. And so we have a problem. We means the technical institutions. So how to gear up for this? Artificial intelligence, the opportunities. So now everyone talks about data analytics. So now they are introducing data analytics, AI in the school itself, perhaps in the school curriculum itself. They are going to introduce. So in that case, again, our own challenges and so on. So emerging areas, data analytics, AI, and so on. So economic factors are liberalization, usually, then unemployment or underemployment and things like that. The environmental or the ecological factors. So we need to train students uh, who are uh, who are a sort of a attentive, who are kind to the environment and the ecology, sensitized to the demands of the ecology and so on. Then, of course, political factors, legislations, that is about the quality and every other institutional framework and things like that. So they are the steep, and so these are the external influences. More very important external influence is the first two, namely how the society perceives the technical education, how the society prefers or doesn't prefer technical education. Then the change in technology, what kind of impact it has on your teaching learning process and infrastructure. And that is where our planning is very important. And that is where we need to spend money, a lot of money. And so in re-engineering our workshops, our laboratories, train our faculty, and that is where the whole thing is about. Okay. Then again, the external is also involves four C's, namely customers, the employers, customers or employers who hire our graduates, the clients or full-time students and their own interest. So what the customers expect from our college, what kind of graduates? So Oriental College want job ready. So what job ready means what? What the industry right now expects from a job ready graduates. And that is what the customer's requirement is about. Client, what the student expects. So every student expects a good job. Some of them wants to take master's degree programs in reputed institutions, and so on. That is the expectations of the students, and whether our planning, our processes cater to this, and that is what is important. Competitors, then the other colleges, other training institutes. So what kind of programs they offer, and so what is the relationship with our own activities in relation to our competitors. So this also has to be taken care of in the planning. Then our collaborators are the industry, alumni, and so on. So there are various companies or government agencies with which my college has got MOU and other agreements, arrangements. Then, so they are our collaborators. So they are giving us a kind of a hand holding, and they are helping in our processes. And so what their requirement expectations, they also has got a role in the planning process. So four C's. So as far as the external environment is concerned, STEEP, namely social, technological, ecological, environmental, and political factors, has to have a bearing on the planning process. Then four C's, namely customers, clients, competitors, and collaborators, also has to have a bearing on the planning process. So we need to develop data collection mechanism. We need to study. We need to capture the requirements of the clients, competitors, the customers, and collaborators as accurately as possible on the steel, namely the society, technological, and environmental factors, etc. And so, what kind of tools are available? And so, this is what. So, so perhaps we need to, yeah, that's right. Then, so identify the shift in needs of customers and clients, identification of competitors and collaborators. So perhaps, right. So we need to identify the source, namely, so these are the conventional data collection tools, namely questionnaires, interview schedules, observation, and focus group meeting, etc. So once we have them, then then perhaps we can accurately capture data on the internal environment, namely four P's, namely properties, the processes, the products, people, products, processes, and the products, and also the steel. So using these data collection tools, you collect data. And so that is what this SWOT data is about. So the SWOT data will give a set of strengths and weaknesses of our own internal environment, as well as the opportunities and threats. And that is what SWOT analysis is about. So the outcome of the SWOT analysis is identifying a set of strengths and opportunities, and the weaknesses and threats. And that is what the SWOT is about. Strength and weakness in the internal environment, opportunities and threats in the external environment. So once you analyze the data of you collected, you will be able to arrive at a set of SWOT. And so, right. So this is what is about. So the CVS is our present status. Then BVS is the desired current view situation, current vision situation. then better vision situation. So the strength and opportunities help us in reaching this, whereas the weakness and threats are sort of a hindrance. So they prevent us to reach the better view situation. So this is what is all about. So this is what it is all about, right? So the outcome of the SWOT analysis, identifying a set of strengths and opportunities and weaknesses and threats. So you need to plan so that you are able to maximally utilize your strength, minimize the effect of threats and weaknesses, maximally utilize the opportunities. So the planning is such that you are maximally utilizing the strength and opportunities and reducing the effect of weaknesses and threats. And that is what is the planning that we are going to do. So you have, so there is a merging process. So a sort of a brainstorming, the strategic planning group will very carefully analyze the opportunities and threats, strengths and weaknesses as identified by SWOT. They will also keep in mind the vision, mission, mandate. And so, keeping in mind all this, then the strategic decisions are made. What are the strategic decisions? That is the specific areas in which, in my institution, which I will develop. Strategic decisions are the specific actions, the specific areas which I will develop in my institute so that I am able to reach the excellence as envisaged. That is the desired state as given by the previous, that is the better view situation. So, so I'm going to a sort of a merging process. So I need to keep in mind my vision, mission, mandate, take into account the opportunities and threats, strength and weakness. I'm going to identify, make a strategic decisions on what kind of actions I need to take so that I'm going to reach the better view situation. So the strategic decisions. So in this model, they are the strategic decisions once they are made. So in terms of thrust areas and objective, thrust areas are a set of areas which requires change in my organization, which needs to be developed, which needs to be developed in my organization so that I'm able to reach the better state. And that is what the strategic decision is about. And it takes into account the mission and also the opportunities and threats and strengths and weaknesses. Right. Okay. So the outcome of this SWOT analysis and a creative merging process is identifying a set of thrust areas which will be taken up for implementation so that they are developed and the institution reaches better height. And that is what is about. So thrust areas. So we will have a look. I'll give you an example of thrust areas, typical thrust areas which any institution will identify in a typical strategic planning process. A thrust area is an important functional area of the organization requiring change. It will be related to an important output of the organization, and they serve as strategic directions in the development of the organization. Right. For example, the thrust areas of current relevance could be developing industry supported laboratories, uh, in technical is industry supported laboratories in technologies such as industrial automation, embedded systems, PLC and SCADA, modular manufacturing system, IoT, renewable energy, and so on. Industry supported laboratories in this area, robotics laboratory through eYantra lab, learning installing a learning management system like Moodle for integrating all learning process, making it online for my students, a good digital library with subscription to, for example, Show the Sindhu and such. central government facilities, and so on. So they are some areas which my institute can take up to achieve excellence. Okay, namely industry supported laboratories, robotic laboratory through e-Yantra lab, learning management system, digital library, and so on. Then, uh, then, then integration of NPTEL and MOOC courses in the teaching learning process. Then enhancing research culture among faculty through JAN programs, access to Shodh Ganga and things like that. So this kind of things, perhaps they form thrust areas. That is in terms of infrastructure, in terms of ICT, some of the areas that can be taken up for development to reach excellence in my institution. So not only that, then more importantly, it's not only the infrastructure and processes that that you need to develop, that you need to develop, but then, so something like the focus on students and staff, that is student mentoring, guidance, and counseling. That is a very important service that you need to take up. Continuing education programs you can do for revenue generation, accreditation of your programs, and many such things you can identify so that your institution is able to reach excellence. So the SWOT analysis, you make a SWOT analysis and identify areas like this which need to be developed in your institute so that your institute move towards excellence, uh, towards excellence, towards excellence. So that is the whole idea here. Right. So these are the thrust areas. That is, thrust areas are major functional areas which require change. Not that they are not available, but then maybe you need to develop them further, or maybe they are not there, you need to take up for implementation in the coming 2 years or so in your institute. Then, so once we have identified thrust areas, then the next step is specify objectives. That is, uh, the, the, the steps that are required, the actions that are needed to implement the thrust area. So they are called the objectives. So for example, staff development, then assess the training needs of staff, prepare comprehensive staff development plan, depute staff or training programs, develop, prepare 3-year plan, depute staff for higher education programs. So they are the steps that are required in achieving staff development. So you identify the objectives or the steps that are required, the actions that are required in achieving a given thrust area, namely staff development. So identify the actions that are required. For example, another continuing education, how to organize continuing education programs in my institute. So by establishing a continuing education center, finding out what kind of continuing education programs are required, organizing such programs for the people from industry and society, and so on and so forth. So these are the steps that are required in organizing continuing education, the thrust area of continuing education. So these are the steps that are required. So they are in this model, they are called objectives, and so they'll be implemented in the coming 2 years so that we are able to achieve the thrust area. So, so through SWOT analysis, we have identified, the institution has identified a set of thrust areas, and the institution has identified a series of steps in implementing each thrust area, and it has to now implement these 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 steps. And so there are a couple of tools that are I'll just explain. There are a couple of tools, namely work plan and action plan, and they are the tools that are required to a sort of a plan implementing the thrust area as well as the objectives. I'll just show you in this model the so the scheme or the performer for work plan and action plan. So this model has got a specific pro forma, and then let us a work plan is a sort of a visual chart that shows the list of objectives for each thrust area and broad time frame. So in a typical strategic plan for 2 3 years, there will be about 8 or 10 thrust areas. And so in the coming 2 years, how these thrust areas will be implemented. So you have a sort of a Gantt chart for implementing these thrust areas, and that is called work plan. Action plan is a sort of a micro level planning. So it just says who will do a particular thrust area, who will do a particular objective, how it will be done, when it will be done, with what resources, and what will be the indicators of success. So the micro level activities are indicated by action plan. And then let me show you the pro forma for uh, um, pro forma for the work plan and action plan, right? So this is the work plan. Uh, so in a typical strategic plan, which runs for 2 years, there will be thrust area 1, 2, 3, 4, about 10 thrust areas, and they will have a set of objectives. Some of the thrust areas have to be identified in sequence. Some of the objectives have to be identified in proper sequence. So how many months are required, and so on. Okay, and so this kind of a planning. So the work plan gives you a broad Gantt chart, the hierarchical relationship between thrust area and objectives, and the time frame with which thrust area objective will be implemented, the logical connection between the different thrust areas, and so on. Because one thrust area may depend on another thrust area, and so it will follow the other thrust area and so on. So that kind of a things are planned through this. This is called the work plan. So the work plan is a tool which helps you in planning the thrust areas, giving it broad time frame. So once you have this, then the action plan for a given thrust area and for a given objective, the action leader, which person by name will be responsible, then what are the objectives, what are the micro level tasks that are required, who will carry out, then specific dates for starting and finishing, then the resources required, and so on. So this involves micro level planning for the objectives, then the tasks, then specifically who will be implementing them. So that is what the action plan is about. So finally, in a typical strategic plan, you will end up with about 10 thrust areas and about 60 or 70 objectives. For each objective, you will develop an action plan, and then you will start implementing. So the action plan forms the sort of a brickwork, the basic brick, the building block in the implementation of the strategic plan, and that involves the micro level planning. So this is a hierarchical relationship. You have the work plan. Strategic plan has got a strategic plan results in a number of thrust areas. For each thrust area, your work plan, number of objectives, and then action plan, a set of them. So when you try to implement the action plan, sorry, the strategic plan gets implemented. The strategic plan gets implemented. Okay, so that is the hierarchical relationship between work plan, action plan, and so on. So that is what this is about. So so again, a sort of a um, so so again a sort of a recapitulation. So what we have done is the external environment is the greatest influencer for planning of any institution, because the external environment is constantly changing. We need to plan for the development of our institute. Then the development of our institute has also got a bearing on our mandate, the vision and mission. And so we sort of identify uh, the situation through a SWOT analysis in this particular model, the internal scan through the 4 Ps, and then the external scan, that is steel, and then by going through the data, we arrive at strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. By analyzing the SWOT, we are able to identify strategic directions in terms of thrust areas, which are specific areas which require change or development. Then we develop a sort of a time frame for each thrust area, and a sort of an action plan, that is who will carry out with what resources. And so this whole thing is put into a document. It's called strategic plan. The whole thing is put into a, so that is called strategic plan. So developing the strategic plan involves every stakeholder, and it requires about 3-4 months, at the end of which you have a strategic plan document. So once you have a strategic plan document through the process which is outlined, then you need to implement the strategic plan, and that is called the strategic management. So once a strategic plan is developed, then you try to implement in 2 years or 3 years time. That is disseminate with all stakeholders. Implement strategic plan. So implementing the strategic plan basically involves implementing all those action plans basically. So action plans together contribute to the thrust area, and thrust areas contribute to the work plan. And then, so the major focus of implementation is monitoring in monitoring the progress, finding out the bottlenecks, giving allocating resources, and so on. That is what monitoring is about. Evaluation of the results, periodic revisions, and so on. So this is what is the implementation is about. The implementation is carried out in a period of 2 years, and when the strategic planning is implemented, then you achieved institutionalizing the strategic management process. Thereby it becomes a part of your culture, your institute culture, and then you can have several revisions. So in fact, there are institutions in Tamil Nadu and Kerala and other places where, in our own region, where the institutions are implemented strategic plan and then gone for several revisions, and then they are benefited out of this, and so on and so on. Right. So that is about the so in short, so it is something like implementing strategic plan. So once you have done it for 2 years, from 2 years again, the environment has changed. So go for SWOT analysis, identify new thrust areas, specific objectives, develop work plan, action plan, again implement for 2 years. So this becomes a cyclical process. Then the management of your institute becomes strategic management, which takes into account every activity of the environment, every expectation of your environment. So this is the model that we have proposed, trained several institutions here in the southern region, and so this is what I so this is what I have planned. I think I have covered in about 1.5 hours exactly, because of the 5 minutes delay, and so now it is 3:35. Perhaps let me stop here.
Yes, sir.
Let me get back to Professor Garg.
Yes, sir.
Let us see whether there are any discussions. I'll be happy to clarify.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Any queries, participants? So, kindly share your mail ID so that participants can ask question on your mail also.
Pardon, sir? Hello.
Hello, sir. Kindly share your mail ID in the chat box.
Okay.
Sir, I got one question, sir.
Yes, sir.
What is the difference between long-term planning and strategic planning, sir?
Yeah, that's right, sir. Long-term planning and strategic planning.
Difference.
Yeah, different. See, the thing is, a sort of I mean, maybe I think I have a slide, and then better I'll explain. So long-term planning is sort of a incremental planning, in the sense, what you do is, for example, let me show you. I have a nice picture on that. Maybe I skipped that. Uh, it's not there. I think it's not there. Okay, it's okay. See, the long-term planning is something like this. You do incremental planning. That is, mainly it doesn't take care of the external environment. A long-term planning is also is about the future. It also involves the planning for 3 or 4 or 5 years. But then the major difference between this model of strategic planning and long-term planning is the, the external environment, namely the requirement of the clientele, the requirement of the student, the requirements of the industry, the changes in technology, and so all those are accommodated in a systematic manner in this particular model. But then when you do long-term planning, perhaps you miss out some of these points. That is, you always focus on your own resources, that is available funding, available human resource, available infrastructure, and then you identify a sort of a, I wouldn't say at random, but then maybe depending on the immediate need, you identify a couple of areas. For example, I need to develop the library. I need to develop a specific workshop this particular coming 2 years, and so on. So that is what you are going to do. You are going to move in incremental steps. And so that is what the conventional long-term planning is about.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Got it. Got it. Sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, participant, any more queries? Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your kind words, sir.
Yes,
The session is wonderful.
yes,
And you have talked about strategic planning, a model of iterative process of strategic planning, cutting edge technologies, SWOT analysis, assessment of external environment, developing work plan and action plan.
thank
So,
you.
a lot about the accreditation process. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
And strategic planning. Thank you very much, sir, for giving your valuable time. Hope you will join in future also, sir.
So one feedback, my audio and video was okay all through.
No, no, sir. No problem. The audio and video is
Excellent.
fine.
Excellent,
Okay,
sir.
sir.
No,
Thank you.
no problem.
No
Excellent.
problem. No problem, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us.
Right, sir.
Participants, I am sharing the feedback link. And if you kindly fill the feedback form. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, sir.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks.
Participants, don't leave the session. Next session will start within few minutes.